Hello and welcome to another Saviors of Uldum card review. First up we have Vile Fiend, 2 mana 2/2 neutral demon with lifesteal. 2 mana 2/2 isn't that great of a stat line. If you're able to buff this minion somehow, perhaps this could work. This isn't necessarily a turn 2 play, but rather a card that you use to synergize with lifesteal or demon to hopefully get more health. Probably won't see a ton of play, maybe in a class like Warlock that needs healing, but yeah, that'd be pretty tough still. Next up is Mortuary Machine, 5 mana 8/8 neutral mech. After your opponent plays a minion, give it Reborn. Now I think for the cost and stats of this card, the disadvantage of giving your opponent minions Reborn is ridiculously overpowered. Obviously, if your opponent just plays a taunt minion, then this minion or another minion you have is going to have to deal damage into that taunt minion, not just once, but now twice. The one advantage I could see with this card is if your opponent doesn't play rush or taunt minions, you could basically just ignore your opponent's minions and go face. This card is pretty bad. Maybe off of the random mech discovery mechanics, you'll see this card, and if so, it's probably going to be bad then too. Next up is Shadow of Death, 4 mana rogue spell. Choose a minion and shuffle 3 shadows into your deck that summon a copy when drawn. Whoa. Okay, so just to clarify, it says choose a minion, which means you could choose enemy minions as well. Now spending 4 mana to essentially do nothing in one turn isn't that great. Rogue does have a decent amount of draw, but I don't think you're consistently going to be able to summon a minion on the same turn. Most likely this is a pretty slow play. This is one of those rogue cards that's really intriguing, like the spell that doubles your death rattles, but in actuality it's not a super competitive card. I think a class like Rogue doesn't need a card that's as slow or controlling and value based as Shadow of Death. But with that said, I'm gonna have fun with this card. Next up is Bone Wrath, 4 mana 2/5 neutral minion with taunt and Reborn. I think Reborn with taunt is a pretty good combo because it's pretty annoying. Unfortunately for this card, most of the stats are in its health, which is usually good for a taunt minion, but that means that this is going to come back with Reborn as a 2/1, which isn't really that much of a nuisance. Yes, it's a chore to get through the first initial 5 health, but only having 2 attack with this minion means your opponent's going to be able to trade most medium-sized minions and survive the attack. Maybe with the taunt buffing warrior, this is another card they can use, but I'm not really convinced about that class, and I don't think this is that strong of a minion regardless. Next up is Pharaoh Cat. This is sweet artwork. 1 mana 1/2 rogue beast with the battle cry, add a random reborn minion to your hand. It's important to note that 1 mana 1/2 beast that adds a card to your hand, it's not bad, but my one issue is that there aren't a ton of really good reborn minions, and none of them really support a certain playstyle in Rogue. The advantage of getting another card from your opponent's class is that it synergizes with the cards that go with that archetype. I think at some point in time, Pharaoh Cat would have worked in a Rogue tempo deck, but the way I see it currently constructed, it just doesn't seem like having a 1 mana minion that gets you another random minion that you don't really know when you're going to play is that important. And with the amount of draw that Rogue has, or the amount of card creation cards like Blink Fox they already have, I don't know if they necessarily need a card like Pharaoh Cat, even though I think it's pretty decent. I don't think Pharaoh Cat's going to see much play. Next up we have Tomb Warden, 8 mana 3/6 mech for warrior with taunt and battle cry, summon a copy of this minion. So it's 8 mana for 2 3/6s. It's 6/12 in total stats, which I think is okay for 8 mana. Not amazing, but obviously the idea is that with a hand taunt buffing deck, if you just land 1 buff on this, it could become 8 mana 2 5/8s, which is ridiculous. And then it could continue to go up from there in terms of hand buffing. I like the design of the taunt cards that they've been printing, but in the case of a hand buffing Tante Warrior, which again has too many words in its name, a big issue is that they also don't have enough hand buffing cards, in my opinion, for the deck to work. There's only 4 or 5 of those hand buffing cards. Oh, it's even worse than I remembered. There's only like 3 of them. On its own, Tomb Warden just isn't worth the 8 mana. I think for 8 mana, you may as well just play a big scary minion as opposed to 2 3/6s. And even if you did get lucky with a taunt buff on this minion, how good of a play is it actually going to be? Next up is Embalming Ritual, 1 mana priest spell, give a minion reborn. It's cheap, but it is also very little value. Oh damn, shout out to our Pharaoh cat. I think it's getting the life put back into it. Oh yeah, I mean, it makes sense. The tagline, guess what, we're getting a new cat, give the cat reborn. The advantage I see with this card is that it's in priest. They've got bigger and better minions like Prophet Velen, Katrina, and there's also neutral minions, but overall they could develop a sort of re-summoning priest, and a card like Embalming Ritual would be a cheap option in order for one of your big minions to survive another turn, or maybe trigger Death Rattle twice because you resummon the minion. But regardless, it's going to add hopefully another big minion to your pool for resummoning. It is tough though because this card is pretty low value and you really only want to hit it on a big minion. It's going to be a tough fit and I don't think it's going to see play, but it might surprise me. Next up is Pharaohs Blessing, 6 mana paladin spell, give a minion +4/+4, divine shield, and taunt. This card art is directly from my nightmares. I don't know why this is so freaky, but like a centaur with a cat face instead, that scares the shit out of me. And he's also like Scottish or something. What is that kilt little? Doesn't matter. His body's a lion, his torso's a human, and then his face is like humanoid cat. God, that's disturbing. 6 mana is a tough place for a buffing spell. You're not only buffing a minion for 4 in stats, but you're also giving it divine shield, which means you're essentially dealing the damage of whatever minion you cast the spell on and the 4 attack of this spell for free with divine shield because you're not taking any damage. It sounds nice, and it could be nice, but at 6 mana you probably won't have a ton of mana left over to work with in that turn. And I think in general it's better to get another minion out on the board, help develop your board, as opposed to just buffing one of your minions. Playing a card like this puts all of your mana and all of your value into one minion. I think Pharaoh's Blessing is worse than a card like Blessing of Kings, because for 2 more mana you're only getting divine shield and taunt, which isn't bad, but I don't think it's necessarily worth it. I don't think there's going to be a reason to play Pharaoh's Blessings, it's just a little bit too weak. And thank God, because hopefully I never see this artwork again. Next up is Conjured Mirage, 4 mana, 3/10, taunt neutral minion, where at the start of your turn, shuffle this minion into your deck. What? That is interesting. So let's say on turn 6 you play Conjured Mirage, and then you play Doomsayer. I'm pretty sure it's going to shuffle this copy back into your deck, and then the Doomsayer is going to go off. You'll have to let me know if I'm correct about that. But I think this is a super useful anti-aggro minion. The fact that they have to deal 10 damage into this is pretty ridiculous. Another amazing use for this card would be maybe by the end of the game when you're both getting towards fatigue, you could play this card, and as long as your opponent doesn't remove it, at the start of your turn, it would just shuffle back into your deck, and then you would draw it right away, basically allowing you to play it infinitely as long as your opponent wasn't able to remove it, and you wouldn't take fatigue damage, and they would. I think there's a lot of decks that could use Conjured Mirage for an anti-aggro tech taunt minion. It doesn't work with buffing Tante Warrior though. And also, it actually doesn't work in an Inner Fire Priest, so I'm happy about that. If you're playing a control deck that wants to go against aggro, maybe you try this out. It is still 4 mana. By that time, your opponent could have enough minions out on the board to deal damage to this minion. I'm not super optimistic that this is going to see like a ton of play as one of those really great anti-aggro cards, but I think there might be 1 or 2 decks that could actually take advantage of this and use it just to buy themselves some more time against an aggro deck. Let me know what you think. This is an interesting one. Alright, those are all of the cards for now. Next episode, or maybe the next episode after that, should be the last one. Maybe there's 2 more left, I'm not sure. Anywho, thank you for watching, and until next time, ta-ta.